Welcome to Win with Richardson and Richardson. What's important now? Success in business most often comes down to hard work, not by silver bullets and quick fixes. It's knowing where to focus that hard work that's key to winning. Join sales prospecting expert and 3-time seven-figure business founder Carrie Richardson and managing partner of R&R Consulting and former owner of Doberman Technologies, Ian Richardson, for radical honesty regarding strategic planning, accountability, and execution that will get you the systematic results you're working toward. Let's get into today's episode. Thought leader and your host, Carrie Richardson.
My name is Carrie Richardson, and I'm your host of WIN. I am one of the partners of Richardson and Richardson Consulting. And with me today is Scott Cooley, who is the CEO and founder of DevTech in Honolulu. Scott started Cybertech Systems when he was only 13 years old. He was one of the first people in Hawaii to help businesses get on the internet, learn how to use email. They focused on internet cabling for offices, and they installed some of the first generation wired networks in Hawaii. Both of his parents were entrepreneurs, which is really cool because nobody really taught me anything about being an entrepreneur. So that's a nice little step up for some people. I'm looking forward to learning more about that. And he studied Japanese in university. So of course, now he runs an IT company. Scott, how are you today?
Great, Carrie. Thanks for asking me to be on today.
Oh, I'm glad that you could join us. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing today, where you're located. What's the weather like?
Today I'm working from my home office and it's nice 82 degrees outside. It's almost 11 o'clock. The kids are in school. I got the house to myself and just another day in paradise. And I have to say this is the high point of my day today. So really happy to be here with you.
To be fair, though, his day is just starting while mine is just ending.
Yeah.
So something much better could happen by the end of the day.
Probably will. We'll see.
So I talked to Scott a little bit before the show started because we always talk to our guests and learn a little bit about them. So what I learned about DevTech is they started in 2001. And between 2001 and 2010, they were what you would describe as a break-fix IT support provider, meaning that something broke and they came out and fixed it. And between now and then, they have transitioned to being a managed IT provider and the premier providers in the Honolulu area. So tell us a little bit about how you went from the break-fix solutions you were offering in 2001 to being one of the, I believe we said pricier, but we're going to use premier providers of IT support in Hawaii.
That was not an overnight transition. The world did not know managed services very well prior to 2010, and it was all break fix. We got paid to rack and stack servers, and then we gave them our card, and they called us when things broke. And prior to 2007, driving and, like you said, trunk slamming and on-site. There was a lot of on-site. I spent a lot of time in the car listening to, we didn't have podcasts then. It was called talk radio on AM. And it was, my days were on the road, going to on-site repair calls and things like that. And we started doing remote support, I think, in 2007, which changed the game entirely. I was able to start spending more of my time in doing remote support, selling, writing up quotes here and there, and then I used subcontractors to send out in the field to do on-site work. And managed services was a really long uphill battle. It was a lot easier to get net new clients on a managed service plan, but a lot harder. I think we finally converted our last break fix block time client last year, and that was someone that had been with us for 25 years. And we finally put them on our managed services plan. So it's a long journey, but today we're 100% managed services, big focus on cybersecurity, and starting this year to do also compliance as a service for the businesses that require that.
So based on our conversation before the show started recording, I understand you bootstrapped your business from zero to where you are today. You've never taken on any external investment and you've never been in any debt. Sounds like an exciting way to run a business, but there's something pretty exciting happening in your business right now. So the current business challenge that Scott and his team are working on are adding to their team, and their team has already grown 3 times the size that it was 2 years ago in the last year. So tell us a little bit about how you're handling that growth spurt.
I'll back up and say my biggest fear in growing the company at all was losing our identity. Our identity was basically me. It was my responsiveness, competency, my affect with the clients. And so I've always been real conservative about who I allow to represent the company in terms of the technicians and subcontractors that we send out. And so that's been a real key component in deciding how to grow, what kind of people are going to fit the culture, because the last thing I want is to grow it and have people say, "Where's Scott Cooley?" I think you described it as moving from like a lifestyle business to a business that has a life of its own, getting the business to thrive without me. And that is something that appeals to me, but it's also scary because for so many years, I was the business. I was the face of the business. And there's that part of me that thinks, can I teach this to someone else, or are they paying for me? Are they paying for the service? And there's some of each. And then there's taking that, what made in dev tech, and translating that into core values that we can. Some of it is you spot it in people, in applicants, and we can tell they're going to be a fit. And some of it, teaching how this is how we do things. These are the kinds of words we use when we're responding to tickets. This is the type of affect that we want to present. So that's been a challenge, is like distilling that identity into something that we can replicate across a diverse team, and everyone's got their own personalities coming into it. Competence, the customer service, all of that.
You're making a pretty important hire this year, though, for the first time ever. Tell us a little bit about that.
Carrie is talking about our first ever hire in the sales department. This will be a business development specialist. And we've never had a sales engine before in all these years, because much to the disappointment of mentors I've had who've said you need to have a sales engine, be cold calling and bringing in net new. We've never done that. We've had very good success with warm leads, referrals, all of these years. This city that we live in is a tight-knit bunch of people who know people and referrals, and we've never had the traditional sales engine of getting cold or lukewarm leads and trying to warm them up. And so for us, this is a big leap. We're designing a whole business development strategy and team, and a team of one to begin with. We found a unique person to fill that role, and it'll basically be expanding out and getting brand awareness, getting out in front of prospects we normally wouldn't get a chance to be in front of, and all kinds of other creative ways to do that, through whether it's outbound marketing or podcasts, or I've been doing a lot of lunch and learn type of things lately, where they ask me to speak as an expert on cyber in law firms type of things. And so all of that is directing towards building this cold to warming up leads type of sales engine. And that's really exciting for us.
Now, up until now, were you the primary driver of finding and closing deals?
I am. And in fact, I see myself as continuing in the outside sales role for the most part. In our industry, or the model that we followed, it's inside sales, outside sales, and the inside sales kind of lines up the appointments. And usually the owner, this is an owner-led sales business, so the owner will go out on the sales calls and close the business. Our sales cycle is extremely long here. It can be months, it can be a year or two or more. And that's just because the first thing we say is we're not here to sell you anything. We're just here to see if it's a fit. Maybe you leave today with a better understanding of technology and how other businesses are using technology. Maybe we work together, maybe we don't. But those conversations over the years have led to sometimes years-long relationships where we end up working together at the culmination of it. And sometimes we don't. And it's good to stay in touch with people. It's a very long process. It's not I'll just tell you a very quick vignette. We had a inside sales guy for about 9 months, and he was a copier salesperson from San Francisco. And he just went crazy trying to do managed service sales because of how long it takes and how much there is, how many moving pieces there is, even just to get a quote together. And we told him, for every lead that you disqualify, that's just as important as getting us an appointment, because that's saving us a customer that's potentially not a fit. But he didn't see it that way, and he moved back to San Francisco and
A lot of my clients don't see it that way either.
went back to selling copiers after that. So
copiers are like the ultimate displacement sale as well, right? Like you either need a copier or you don't, and there isn't much that you could say to somebody that would convince them to replace a copier that was working perfectly. Yeah. So if you're a phone grinder, and those copier guys are trained by some of the best people in the world. Xerox's training is second to none. You can write your own ticket if you can spend 5 years at Xerox. So, if you can't make it there,
yeah,
the odds are you're going along the right way. And I personally believe that you have a real advantage peer to peer, talking business owner to business owner about the unique challenges of running a business. And you guys have some more unique challenges, right? It's not, and we mentioned this earlier, that the competition can't just walk across the street and muscle in. They're going to have to take a plane, or they're going to have to take a boat. There are some very real restrictions to just setting up shop in a place like Hawaii. So you can use that to your advantage, but I imagine there's got to be times where it's also a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, no, Hawaii is a great place to do business. It's self-contained, it's surrounded by water. We don't have people setting up shop across state lines and trying to come in and take our clients. And these relationships are really built on trust. So our clients they are clients for life. It's built on long-term relationships, and that's what I like about this place. I was born and raised here in Hawaii, and I think everyone thinks that their market is different. I truly believe our market is different because we're all isolated on this island together, and people know each other. You really can't burn your bridges here, because that same person you're going to run into them at the store, at Costco. You're going to run into them at the next company you work for. They might be the CFO, and everyone knows that. And so people here are very diplomatic and we have this thing called the Aloha Spirit, and people are kind and considerate. And personally, I don't think I could hack it in a place like LA, where it's just a dog eat dog. This suits me. I'm open, I'm vulnerable. I like to build relationships. I don't do the hard sell. And for me, this is a good environment to do business. There's an upper limit, of course. There's only so many businesses in our target addressable market. A lot of people go to Silicon Valley because they want to make it big. But for us, I have a small family. I got 10-year-old girls actually, and to raise a family and have a small business, this is a nice place to do it.
I have a 10-year-old who will be turning 11 on February. She doesn't have a birthday this year. She's a
The
Libra.
29th, that's right.
So the second thing we talked about was a recent achievement or milestone that you'd like to share with us. And I think this kind of feeds back into the conversation that we were just having. There's a lot of the things that we talked about being a principal-led sales organization and the things that you learned about your business and about how to build that process for your new business development rep came with some support from some like-minded friends. So you mentioned that you joined a peer group this year and that it made an incredible impact on your business. So tell us a little bit about that. How did you hear about it? Why did you choose that particular peer group? And what are you getting from it?
Yeah, it's been a huge part of my journey over the past year. We've been a member of TruMethods by Gary Pica since he started, which was about 11 years ago. And TruMethods used to just be the self-study framework where you would study the video content, apply it in your business, and they had a once-a-year meeting. And a few years ago, right before COVID, Gary started a peer group called TruPeer. And what they would do is, and I avoided it, I didn't want to do it. And the primary reason was it required you to fly to Philadelphia 4 times a year. And that is 17 hours of travel, and it is not comfortable. I wasn't ready. The truth was I just wasn't ready in the beginning. They were talking about accountability. I didn't want to be accountable. They were talking about sales. I didn't want to do sales. We were comfortable at this certain revenue mark where the margins were great and the hours were great. And I just wasn't ready to put in the work to get to the next level. And through a confluence of events this past year, coming out of the pandemic, hiring a VP who really started to kick my butt in the right direction, I revisited joining the peer group, and it's just blown my mind. It's one of those things that you go, oh, I should have done it sooner. But then I realized I wouldn't have been ready if I'd done it sooner. It came at just the right time. And it is just motivating and invigorating to be surrounded by like-minded folks who are just trying to do the same thing. And the thing about TruMethods in particular is these are folks that are on a daily basis trying to get better. We're just trying to be better business people, be better leaders, be better communicators, be better with our clients, be better with our families. It's a program of improvement and little baby steps at a time. But having that, if you want to call that an accountability partner or support network, it is just so vital when you're engaged in that, because it's lonely at the top, like they say. It's lonely at the top, and to have that support really makes a difference. And so we meet, it's actually now 3 times a year, and it's different places in the US. So our last meeting was in Phoenix, so that was only 6.5 hours away.
And a little warmer too.
Yeah. And I'm getting used to the Philadelphia travel now. It's not as bad. But it's great, even in this world when we can do so much over Zoom, nothing compares to getting together in the same space physically and putting our phones on silent and focusing on the business for, it's like a 3 or 4 day event where all we're doing is working on the business. And I'm gratified to be able to say that we're at the point that I can actually go to Philadelphia and the staff here can work in the business while I work on the business. And that was not the case for the longest time.
I understand something pretty exciting happened for you guys this year. You won an award. Tell us about that.
The Pacific Business News, which is our local business journal, put out a list of fastest growing companies. And it was evaluating revenue between 2019 and 2021, which was a particularly difficult time for a lot of businesses during and right after the pandemic. But we managed to make the list. And I have to tell you, that was the first time I've ever submitted to a list like that. I was always very private with the company, anything that would ask to divulge financials or anything like that. And I debated whether I should even apply for it. And I asked some peers and some colleagues, and the answer I got was success begets success. If just by putting yourself out there, per ranking you come in. And I think we were like 36 out of 47. We were at the bottom of the list, but just by being out there, it lends some credibility to the business. And that tell you what, Carrie, I wasn't even on LinkedIn until a year ago. I was like fly below the radar kind of guy. And I just realized that in this day, they have to play the game. And so I started putting myself out there some more. So I signed up for this survey, and they came back and they said, you made the list. And that was a big deal for us. And I think we were 33% growth compared to those 2 years. And that was a time that some industries did really well. And unfortunately, a lot of other types of companies went out of business during that time. And we made it through. And yeah.
The testament to resilience, really. And the time when so many businesses were forced to reevaluate things or pivot or lay off their team members, you were actually growing your team, which is super exciting. And I know that the third thing that we were going to talk about, the opportunity that you were planning to pursue next, I already asked you about, which was the acquisition of your new sales hire. We got to talk about so many things before we came on air today. One of the things that I thought was interesting was that most people will build a job and hire someone to fill that job. You met a person who you really liked and who you felt would be culturally an excellent fit in your organization and changed the job role a little bit. So tell us about how that came about. You were looking for a very specific thing, and then you met a very specific person, and now you feel like you've got this like really interesting synergy with them where they're going to have more responsibility and probably be able to accomplish a lot more. Talk to me about how you made that choice.
Yeah, and I think I might get some flack from certain business consultants about this methodology, but in our small office, we all wear multiple hats. And I did the eMyth org chart where they tell you to draw an org chart, and even if you put your name in every single box, you do an org chart so that you know what the roles are that need to be filled. And so we wear multiple hats, and we're looking for talent that can hopefully meet more than one criteria. And we've done it a couple times now where we've had an idea of, we're huge into cybersecurity this year. We had to hire a full-time person to manage our security stack. And once we interviewed a couple people, we found someone who not only had that technical ability, but it turned out would be able to fit some other roles that we needed. And so that's a plus on his eligibility for that. And that's not to say that we couldn't do it, but it's just a nice bonus. And when we met, we were casting the net for inside sales, and that was, I think, a term that maybe some people weren't familiar with, and we got some responses, and these were Xerox type salespeople, and we found someone. Her background was not in inside sales, but in interviewing her, we just found personality-wise that we felt that she could do a really good job in more of a holistic development program. And here we are, basically, we're building the business development program from scratch. And she's had experience doing that in other industries. And we said, well, let's just back up a step, and we're not going to pretend that we have this all figured out and just give you a playbook. We want to bring you on and have you help us develop this program. And if that includes, if that's cold calling, if that's direct mail, if that's LinkedIn, networking events, whatever it is, you're going to be integral in defining and developing that process. So it's a combination of inside, outside sales, networking, and it's just really exciting to see what can happen when you let yourself think outside the box. Because in TruMethods, I will tell you, it's a very strict framework, and it works really well if you have dedicated people for the roles. But when you're small and you're all wearing hats, then it can be, it's just not, we can't afford to have a dedicated person in each role. So if you can think outside the box and look at this and say, this could actually be more than what we thought we wanted. And it's always it feels so good when you discover something like, I didn't even know that this is what I wanted. And that's been a big part of our growth, is just being open-minded to those opportunities, instead of just saying, we've got this job description, this is what it is, these are the hours. And that's worked so far. I understand as we grow, maybe we need to formalize it a little more. But for now, it's been a great way to build a really fun, dynamic team of people that really want to be here and are passionate about what we do.
Really exciting to hear somebody who's been in business as long as you have still describing their business as fun. I don't hear that a lot. So Congratulations on building a culture that not only is your team thriving in, but that you're still enjoying from day to day as well. That's not a simple feat. So I'm really glad you could join us today. You are our first guest from Hawaii.
Thank you.
I think it's Aloha. We talked about Aloha Spirit, which I really loved. I think that's a wonderful core value. And you mentioned that you had some core values that you lived by there. We're almost out of time, so I don't get to grill you on what they are, but believe me, I will be asking you once we stop recording today. Scott Cooley from IndevTech, thank you for sharing how you're winning with us. And I will be certain to follow up with you in 90 days and about 180 days to see how that new hire worked out for you and whether or not your theory is correct. So have a great day. And for everyone else that took some time out of their day today to listen, thanks for joining us, and take it easy.
Great, Kay. Thanks so much for having me.
You've been listening to Win with Richardson and Richardson. What's important now? We're so glad you've joined us and know you're one step closer to winning big in your business too. We'd love to connect with you outside of the show. If you have any questions or comments, please reach out to connect@rnr.consulting. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast so you'll easily know when new episodes are available. Until next time, you can win, and we're here to help.